Hi, class. Hope you're doing well. Hope you've had a good weekend. Um, I personally just got back from last night from Olivet Homecoming, where I probably crossed paths with some of you and didn't even know it because the nature of the online course where I haven't seen you face to face yet. I don't know that we'd actually recognize each other, but I know there's a lot of you floating around on campus. So it was a great time, and in honor of that, I'm still wearing my Olivet uh, hoodie. So pardon the casual attire. I want to talk a little bit about the content been going through with regard to expert witnesses. And I think some of you, there's been some confusion, and I haven't checked back in the forums today to see how it's been clarified. I've asked some questions to make it dive a little deeper. I've seen some really good coverage on the Daubert rule, talking about that precedence on what the criteria are for being an expert witness, and where that lends value to a case and what the courts are looking for. But then the examples we get, I think the question was, would you qualify to be an expert witness? And I think, the answers I'm getting kind of fish around the fact that you would say no. Your backgrounds just aren't there, and I think that's totally fair. And there's no shame. Most of the population would not fit that need for any particular subject matter, just because it's quite a stringent criteria you have to meet. We did seem to get a little bit confused on the difference between just an expert in the case, uh, or I'm sorry, a witness, not an expert, just a standard witness in a case, versus a consultant or someone to correct an issue that has not actually been in litigation or in any criminal proceedings, versus an expert witness. I want to kind of take through an example there, a hypothetical that actually probably rings pretty close to true on some real world scenarios, but I'm really not stealing from a specific example. But if we had an automotive issue, we had an accident where someone was killed in a collision. There's different pieces represented here that we've touched on in this class. So if I was walking down the street and I witnessed this collision and I was called to testify in court as to what I saw, um, and I saw that it appeared that a vehicle kept accelerating through a stop sign or through a red light, I would not be an expert witness. I would be a witness to a thing that happened. I would be an actual material witness. I was firsthand knowledge of the event. I'm not an expert witness. My witness comes from the fact that I was present and can give a firsthand accounting. So I might say, I saw this car going through the intersection. I saw smoke as though they were playing their brakes, and yet the car was still accelerating through the intersection. And then they struck this other vehicle, and then things got ugly. And I saw that the victim on the other side of the collision was not doing well. And that would really be where it would end for me. I couldn't really speculate what was happening other than what I saw. I saw this smoke that appeared that someone was trying to brake, and the car was still accelerating through the intersection. Now, what could be is that could be that there's an accelerator issue, that the car's computer or the accelerator pedal was sticking, or some malfunction. We'll say that the computer didn't work right, so that it was not responding appropriately to stepping off the gas pedal and stepping onto the brake. The brakes were firing, but the failsafe to actually, ramp down the engine functionality wasn't working correctly. I might be an engineer that designs such systems. I might work on that specific system, and I could get called in to actually correct that malfunction in the software by the manufacturer. That would also not be an expert witness role. That would be a consultative role, correct? I'm being brought in for my expertise on this particular problem to solve the problem, not to talk about it, not to work through any legal proceedings. That's what many of you actually touched on, was the consultative role. So I want to distinguish that's different from an expert witness. An expert witness would be someone who can come in and give independent accounting on what would be best practice in the design of such a system and where design shortcomings existed. So if I'm a licensed software engineer like I am, and suppose I had experience in the automotive industry designing the software and computer systems for automobiles, which I don't, so I wouldn't be a good expert witness in that regard. I could be brought in to testify and examine the code that runs that car's computer, and I could look for defects and things that were done against standard best practices and probably against industry, uh, trade association groups, best practices and standards. And I could cite where there was a deficiency and there was some negligence and perhaps unqualified people uh, had developed this code, and that was really the shortcoming. And that could be used to possibly be used in civil proceedings where money is awarded to the family of the victim, or even criminal proceedings if there's other data that can be used to show that the company knew they were hiring people that weren't really skilled or adequate to design such systems. And the expert witness wouldn't really speculate as to that, but they would speculate. They would give their expert opinion on the state of the code, whether it was adequate or not, if the shortcomings were typical of something you might see in anyone's code because it's just the opportunity for human error, or if these were known best practices that should have been taken to safeguard against the issue and fail-safes just were not put in place. And that would really be the expert witness's role. The expert witness is kind of one of the few roles in a court that's allowed to give an opinion on something instead of just stating facts that were witnessed. Now, that opinion has to be backed on facts of how things are done and why they're done that way and what they actually observed. So it's really not a pure speculative opinion, but that's really the difference. And also, the expert witness, unlike the just material witness that we talked about earlier, someone that witnessed the event, the expert witness is entitled to compensation. That's a question I think that's in your textbook that we're covering this week, because they really are being hired to execute their skills as a practitioner in an independent review of the facts of that led up to this event. So, I'm an independent software engineer being asked to put my skills to use to examine the software design for this system. So I have reasonable expectation of compensation, and the court really has no issue with that, provided that I live up to my end of the bargain ethically. I give an adequate opinion that is not based on what that compensation is, and that I will not, I'm not entering this to take the cash first and give the opinion based on what the payout is. So that's really some clarifying comments on what the expert witness process looks like, what the difference is between what we were seeing in some of the discussions. And I want to encourage you, be really thoughtful as you're putting these discussions on paper. So I think it's fair if the question is, would you qualify as an expert witness? It's fair that you might say no. And you're trying to discuss kind of where your expertise is and similar roles. But I'd like you to, if it's a no, dive a little deeper. Find who would, why would they, are these credentials adequate? What are some examples that you've seen or found in some independent research? Go treat this like this is a graduate program. I want you to go dive deeper, go a source beyond what is expected for the question. And that's going to be even more critical because many of you do not come from technical education backgrounds. You found yourself in some technical roles or quasi-technical roles. And if you want to manage technical people, you're going to have a learning curve that you're going to have to overcome to catch up to their educational background. You're up to it. I'm confident of that. But this is the expectation that you need to go above and beyond, and really encourage you to kind of come back with more questions, more dialogue with me. I hope to do one of these videos each week the rest of the way through to kind of engage with you at a deeper level. I've got some people waiting to hear back from me on some appointments to do the mentoring sessions. I really love that. I want to hear where you're going with this degree and why you're doing it, and I want to know how I can help. So thanks for all your activity this week. I look forward to another successful week in week 3. So have a great night. Thanks a lot.